Imagine an empire, a true giant. This empire stretched across continents. It touched Europe, Africa, and Asia. Its name was Rome. For centuries, Rome was the center of the world. Its legions were feared, its laws were respected, its cities were marvels of engineering and art. People from all corners of the known world flocked to its lands. They sought fortune, or perhaps just a bit of Roman order in a chaotic world. This was the Roman Empire at its peak, a power unlike any seen before. It seemed like it would last forever. But even giants can stumble. Deep within its massive body, Rome was beginning to show cracks. These were not always visible on the surface. To many, Rome still looked invincible. Its armies still marched, its emperors still ruled from magnificent palaces, yet the foundations were slowly, almost imperceptibly weakening. The sheer size of the empire, once its greatest strength, was becoming a burden. The signs were there, if you knew where to look. The borders were vast, almost too vast to defend. Enemies pressed in from all sides. This story is about one of those moments. Before we get to the year 395 AD, let's paint a picture. What was Rome dealing with? Think of a house, a very large, very old house. And a storm is raging outside. That was Rome in the late 4th century. The barbarians were at the gates. This term, barbarian, is what the Romans called people outside their borders. These groups were not a single enemy, they were many different peoples. Goths, Vandals, Franks, Alemanni, Huns. Each had their own reasons for moving, for fighting, for seeking entry into the empire. Sometimes they wanted to trade, sometimes they wanted land to settle, sometimes they were fleeing other, more dangerous enemies like the Huns pushing westward. But often their movements led to conflict. Roman legions stretched thin across thousands of miles of frontier, fought constantly. They battled on the Rhine, they fought on the Danube, they defended Britain, they guarded the eastern deserts. It was a relentless, grinding pressure. Imagine the strain on manpower. Imagine the cost in gold and resources. Internal problems made things worse. The empire had gone through terrible civil wars before. Generals with loyal armies would march on Rome or on each other. This instability weakened the state from within. Into this troubled world steps a man named Theodosius. We call him Theodosius the Great. He became emperor in the East in 379 AD, and eventually the sole ruler of the entire Roman Empire. He was the last man to hold that title, to rule both West and East together. Theodosius was a skilled general. He was a devout Christian. He faced enormous challenges from the moment he took power. One of his biggest tasks was dealing with the Goths. They had recently crushed a Roman army at the Battle of Adrianople. This was a disaster. A Roman emperor had been killed in battle. Theodosius managed to make a treaty with the Goths. He allowed them to settle within the empire's borders. They were supposed to serve in the Roman army as allies or foederati. This was a controversial move. Some saw it as a sign of weakness, others saw it as a practical solution to a difficult problem. Rome needed soldiers, the Goths needed a home, but it also meant large groups of armed, semi-independent barbarians living on Roman land. This would have consequences down the road. Theodosius also made a huge decision about religion. He made Nicene Christianity the official state religion of the Roman Empire. This was a massive shift. Pagan temples were closed, heresies were suppressed. This decision would shape the future of Europe and the Mediterranean world for centuries. It tied the church closely to the state. Emperor Theodosius I was not an old man when he died. He was probably in his late 40s. But the stress of rule, the constant campaigning, it took its toll. As he lay dying in Milan in January 395 AD, his thoughts turned to his sons. He had two, Arcadius and Honorius. Arcadius the elder was about 18 years old. Honorius the younger was only 10. These were young men, boys really, to inherit the rule of the Roman world. Neither of them seemed to possess the strong character or military skill of their father. This was a problem, a big problem. Theodosius knew the dangers. He knew the empire needed strong leadership. Perhaps he hoped that by dividing the empire, he was giving each son a more manageable task. The idea of dividing imperial responsibilities was not entirely new. Emperors like Diocletian had created the Tetrarchy, a system of 4 rulers, a century earlier. Other emperors had appointed co-emperors to rule different regions. Section 5, 395 AD. The line is drawn. The year is 395 AD. Theodosius the Great is dead, his will is read. The Roman Empire, that colossal entity, is now officially 2. Imagine a map. A line is drawn roughly north to south. It runs through the Balkans, through the Mediterranean. To the east of this line lies the domain of Arcadius. This Eastern Roman Empire included Greece, Asia Minor, Syria, Egypt. It was generally wealthier. It had larger cities, it had more easily defensible frontiers in some areas. Its capital, Constantinople, was a fortress, a new Rome. To the west of the line lay the inheritance of Honorius, the Western Roman Empire. This included Italy, Gaul, modern France, Britannia, Britain, Hispania, Spain, and North Africa. This half faced immense challenges. It had long, vulnerable land borders along the Rhine and Danube rivers. These borders were under constant pressure from Germanic tribes. The West was perhaps less economically vibrant than the East at this point. Its resources were stretched thin. Its political situation was often more chaotic. The young Honorius would have a very difficult reign. The division was meant to be administrative. In theory, it was still one Roman Empire, just with two emperors. They were supposed to cooperate. Section 6, Two Halves, One Fate, the immediate shockwaves. The death of Theodosius and the formal split of the empire sent immediate shockwaves across the Roman world. The two new emperors, Arcadius in the east and Honorius in the west, were young. They were inexperienced. They were not the strong, decisive leaders their father had been. As a result, real power quickly fell into the hands of powerful figures behind the throne. In the west, the Vandal general Stilicho became the dominant force. He was Honorius's guardian and regent. He was a capable military commander. He fought hard to defend the west. In the east, Arcadius was influenced by a succession of powerful courtiers and ministers. Figures like Rufinus, Eutropius, and later the Empress Eudoxia. These advisors often pursued their own agendas. Sometimes their interests clashed with those of the Western court. This led to tension. Instead of cooperation, there was often rivalry. Stilicho, for example, claimed that Theodosius had appointed him guardian over both sons. The Eastern court rejected this claim. This created suspicion and mistrust from the very beginning. Section 7. The West crumbles. A slow, agonizing end. For the Western Roman Empire, the division of 395 AD marked the beginning of an accelerated decline. The problems were already there, of course, but the split made them harder to solve. The West had less money than the East. It had longer, more difficult borders to defend. It had a series of weak or ineffective emperors after Honorius. Powerful generals often fought each other for control, further weakening the state. It was a recipe for disaster. And disaster came, slowly but surely. One of an early, terrible blow was the sack of Rome in 410 AD. Alaric and his Visigoths, after years of campaigning in Italy, finally breached the walls of the ancient capital. For 3 days, they looted the city. Rome was no longer the political capital of the West. The court had moved to Ravenna, but Rome was still the symbolic heart of the empire, the eternal city. Its fall sent a shockwave of horror and disbelief throughout the Roman world. How could this happen? Section 8. The East endures, a new dawn for Byzantium. While the West was crumbling, the story in the Eastern Roman Empire was very different. The East not only survived, it thrived. It would go on to last for another 1,000 years. We call it the Byzantine Empire, though its people always called themselves Romans. Why did the East endure when the West fell? There were several key reasons. The division of 395 AD, in a way, helped the East. It allowed the Eastern emperors to focus their resources on their own territories. They were not constantly drained by the endless problems of the West. Constantinople, the capital of the East, was a major advantage. It was a magnificent city. It was strategically located on the Bosporus Strait, controlling trade between Europe and Asia, the Black Sea, and the Mediterranean. More importantly, it was incredibly well defended. It had massive walls. It was surrounded by water on 3 sides. It could withstand long sieges. This gave the Eastern emperors a secure base, a base that was almost impossible for barbarian armies to capture in this early period. Section 9. The Shattered Mirror, How 395 AD Forged Europe. The decision made in 395 AD, the formal division of the Roman Empire, was like shattering a giant mirror. The pieces would never quite fit back together in the same way. Its consequences echoed down through the centuries. They profoundly shaped the future of Europe and the Mediterranean world. The most immediate impact was the divergence of East and West. 2 distinct civilizations began to emerge from the common Roman heritage. This split would grow wider over time. It affected language, culture, religion, and politics. In the West, the collapse of Roman central authority led to a period of fragmentation. Germanic kingdoms rose on the ruins of Roman provinces. This was the birth of medieval Europe. The Franks in Gaul, the Visigoths in Spain, the Anglo-Saxons in Britain. The Roman Catholic Church, centered in Rome, became a powerful unifying force in this fragmented Western world. It preserved Latin learning. It converted the Germanic peoples to Christianity. The dream of a revived Roman Empire in the West would linger, inspiring figures like Charlemagne. But the West would remain politically divided. In the East, the Byzantine Empire carried the torch of Roman civilization for another millennium. It acted as a vital buffer,